Hi everyone. Today I'm going to continue on with my discussions of some recent boutique label releases for January of 2023. And today I want to talk about the Dunwich Horror, or as the Brits would say, the Dunwich Horror. And this is a 1970 film starring Dean Stockwell, Sandra D, directed by Daniel Haller. Based on a short story novella by H.P. Lovecraft, released by AIP, American International Pictures, and associated with Roger Corman as executive producer on this film. And this is a story about an infamous family, the Whatley family. Wilbur Whatley, played by Dean Stockwell, is seen in the opening passage of the film in a library. He's interested in a book called the Necronomicon. It's a very rare, priceless book full of ancient rituals and incantations. We're in Northern California, in a university library, and one of the workers there is played by Sandra D, and she is quite taken by Wilbur Whatley. She's sort of like hypnotized. We're visually implied that Wilbur has hypnotic eyes, and although he is not successful in his efforts to borrow the book, he is allowed to look into it. And the head professor of this library is well aware of the Whatley family history, so he is anxious to learn a little bit from Wilbur Whatley. But he soon figures out there's something a little bit off about Wilbur, although Sandra D doesn't see it. So he lures her back to his home in Dunwich, where he is sort of, because of his family history of some horrors in the family history, he is infamous. He is sort of shunned. He lives in this decaying old mansion type house, and we quickly find that Sandra D, the movie is, at least in one aspect, it's a lady in distress film, and it draws on some of the elements of society of 1969. So we have hippies scene. This was made a few months before the Sharon Tate murders, but already there was something in the air that there maybe was something wrong with this kind of hippie culture where all inhibitions, social inhibitions, are stripped away, and that there might be some evilness involved in it, which this film exploits that idea. And also the psychedelic, there's some psychedelic imagery in the film very much of the time. And maybe due to the influence of Roger Corman, executive producer, wanting to put into the film things that were part of the film culture. In the year before, we had Rosemary's Baby, which was a huge success. So some of the elements of the film and in the poster art is draws on this Rosemary's Baby, this, you know, that a demon would be born within a human womb. And also we get a little bit of 2001: A Space Odyssey, which was also a big hit of 1968. So we learn very quickly that there's nefarious purposes, and really the gist of the story is summoning back what are called the Old Ones, and these are the kind of supernatural beings that existed before man. One of the supplements, I think it's mentioned, it may be actually be in the novel, the novella by Lovecraft, that there is a winter when these invisible creatures ruled the earth and the universe, and then there's the summer where human beings have come along, but soon we will be back to the winter again. So Wilbur Whatley, who is somehow related to these Old Ones, is trying to summon, and using Sandra D as a kind of a useful transition to bring the Old Ones back. He, for some reason, needs her. And so it's drawing very much on a sense of the otherness of the universe, that we are as human beings, we can't possibly comprehend the universe that's around us and the forces that draw draw from universal laws, and there must be more than just us, that we can't see it. So this very much, the old ones in particular, is very much part of the Lovecraft story. Now, I had never read a story by H.P. Lovecraft. I was never attracted, as a kid, I was never really much attracted to the horror genre, both in novels and in movies. And also Lovecraft, the only thing I really knew outside he was a horror horror writer, author, that he also had terribly racist and prejudiced views that he expounded far more than the normal racism of American society in the 1920s. But I wanted to read the story before I watched the movie, and it was easily downloadable, from if you have an e-reader, and it took about an hour to read. And I was just surprised by the poetic descriptions of Lovecraft. I mean, he really was an excellent writer. And although the film draws on the old ones, it's a very different film. The film is a very different adaptation. Lovecraft was writing about about Massachusetts countryside that he saw as deformed and decaying. The Watley family. Wilbur Watley in the story is like a giant 9-foot figure, grotesque. There's no Sandra Dee character, so I was reading the story. I thought, I wonder where Sandra Dee is going to fit into this movie version. And it's set what is called and I'm not going to say this right, the Cthulhu mythos. This is the Dunwich Horror is part of that Lovecraft series of stories that draw on this mythos, and of which the Necronomicon is a basis for that mythos. So we have an interesting kind of adaptation of Lovecraft. Because we were in Northern California in 1970, and the town of Dunwich, which is a horror show in the story, is like a thriving, artsy, antique-y kind of weekend destination for people from the big city. And it's very interestingly cast as well, because we get Dean Stockwell. Stockwell said later that he played the part tongue-in-cheek. And it really, I liked it better when I watched it with the commentary than the first time through, and especially with Sandra Dee, because here she is, the America's sweetheart kind of girl, but she's outgrown that now, and now she's trying to make an adult film and a horror film. She seemed a little bit out of place, but I think she gives a pretty good rendition of a girl that is sort of passive and willing to go along with this rather strange looking man that she seems to be hypnotized by. And there's some good people in the supporting cast. Ed Begley. I think it was his last film. Must have been, because they mentioned that he died about 3 months after the filming. And he's always good. He's playing the professor that tries to save the Sandra Dee character, along with her girlfriend. And then the local doctor, played by Lloyd Bachner, who would be very recognizable, anybody who watched a lot of TV in the 70s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. Sam Jaffe, Gunga Din, plays Wilbur's father, who was very different in the movie than he was in the book. He seems to be fearful of the old ones, whereas in the book he is part of the conspiracy to bring them back. We also see Talia Coppola, and Talia Coppola would soon to be Talia Shire. So this was This was Adrian and Connie from The Godfather, and obviously Francis's younger sister. And Francis Coppola also was part of the Roger Corman family, and got his start working on and directing Dimension 13, which was his first film. And the director, Daniel Haller, he was an art director who, at a very young age in the 1950s, Daniel Haller is still with us, he was just invaluable to Roger Corman for the Edgar Allan Poe movies, where they had limited budget for sets. He could come up with all kinds of ingenious ways to make the sets look a lot better than what they cost. And he had gotten the chance to do another Lovecraft adaptation as his first director job. It was called Die Monster Die. I think in the U.S. it was called something else. But he continued to direct after the Dunwich Horror, but mostly on TV shows. I think into the 1980s, he directed quite a few episodes of many different television shows. And in the supplements, and this is, I mean, I'll show you, we have a slipcase, and there's reversible art in the. I won't show it to you because I think it's not considered YouTube friendly. It sort of plays on the Rosemary's Baby kind of intimating a kind of rape scene. So it does have that, and it also comes with a booklet. But I mean, Arrows gives this film so many supplements of great length. It's just incredible the amount of attention this film gets. So I guess it is, even though I'm not that in tune with horror films from this era, I guess this Dunwich Horror is sort of a landmark film. We get a conversation between a film historian, Stephen Bissett, and a horror author, Stephen Laws, and they talk on Zoom about everything about this film and everything surrounding it. It goes on for over 2 hours. And the film is 110 minutes, so this conversation is longer than the film. But they cover a lot of great ground, and they spend a lot of time talking about the screenwriter, Curtis Lee Hanson, he was called, and soon to become Curtis Hanson, who had been, as a young man, editing a film magazine called Cinema. And then this is his first screenplay. This is 1970, he directed some more films, but it was 1982 with The Bedroom Window that he first got noticed, and of course he had his big success I guess it was around 2000 with LA Confidential, and did win an Academy Award for the screenplay for that movie. So they attribute a lot of what's in this film to Hanson. There was a previous screenplay that was meant for Boris Karloff playing the Ed Begley part and Peter Fonda playing the Dean Stockwell part that did not come about. That was going to be directed by Mario Bava, but Bava had made another film, had made a previous film for AIP, which was a disaster at the box office. So that version was scrapped. And then Hanson came along to work modifying the original screenplay. We also get about a 30-minute interview with Ruth Ann Emmers, I believe her name is, and boy, she really knows Lovecraft. She knows the horror. So another excellent. I mean, I sat through the 2-hour the 2-hour Zoom discussion because these are two boomers, and they were mentioning a lot of. There was a lot of reference things that I did, in fact, remember. And so Catherine Emmers really does a good job on placing the film within the Lovecraft universe itself. And then we get another fairly long, I think it's about 30 minutes, where Daniel Huckabee talks about the music of Lex Baxter, who did the film score. And it is a really good film score. And Lex Baxter was a really prominent music composer and had many successes in the 1950s. He liked doing horror films because it allowed him to really experiment, which he does here with some electronic instruments. Then we get a commentary by Guy Adams and Alexander Benedict, and this is really loopy. It's one of the most loopy commentaries I've ever heard, because they seem to have a lot of inside jokes, so they're cracking themselves up. They're not allowing us into the conversation as much as they probably should have, but in the end, I sort of enjoyed the loopiness of it. So then we get a booklet. It's got two excellent essays, one by Jack Sargent, and that delves a lot into the filming of the Dunwich Horror, and then a piece by Johnny Maines, and this is on Daniel Heller. So we get a lot of information about Daniel Heller and his contribution to the Roger Corman universe itself. So again, you know, a film with, I mean, if you like this film, you definitely have to get this, because the supplements alone are worth the price of admission, and really puts to shame some of the Criterion editions that come out that have hardly any extras, and here we get in abundance. Okay, so thanks a lot for everybody who managed to listen. Comments are welcome. Take care.